Did you know Hexwraiths have fire damage? Yep, I bet a lot of you didn't know. Some of you might have, but it's a trait and an interaction on a unit you don't see super often, so many people don't know about it. But yes, Hexwraiths do indeed have magic and fire damage. It should be noted the Regiment of Renown does not have fire damage. They're the chill guys after all, but against a faction which is weak to fire, it can be an interesting play. Norsca, though, ethereal units are also risky against them because they have plenty of access to magic damage. Let's go over the builds here real quick. This is Aneurysm Sauce, his replay, so big thanks for the replay. I have to say this is the correct way of playing Heinrich Kemmler. No spells on him, just Krell summons. He's also got his Cloak of Mists and Shadows. He's here to more or less be an extra healing battery, +5 melee attack, and Resurrection on that Chaos Tomb Blade's quite nice. The Necromancer is the one with the spells and a Forbidden Rod, 2 Unholy Lodestones, 2 Cairnwraiths, some Spears, Grave Guards, 2 Great Weapons, plus the Stearnsman. Up against a whole spam of Marauders, plus Marauder Great Weapons. We've got Javelins, Wolfric on a Mammoth, Shaman Sorcerer, Lore of Fire, so there's AoE fire damage there. Some Hounds and some Horsemen hidden out in the woods over there. A couple of Skin Wolves, and of course a Frostworm. Frostworm is the only unit in this army that has innate magic damage, but of course, the Firecaster with Burning Head Fireball can do some AoE. The Javelins also just come in, deal a ton of damage. Because of that 0 armor, they get the full brunt of the anti-large, and even that physical resistance can't really save them there. But, yeah, they're now chasing on this flank, going after those Skin Wolves and the Marauder Horsemen. Really nice Burning Head, just roasts out these Cairnwraiths and the Spears, so already doing some nice damage over on that flank. But, yeah, the Hexwraiths do have not only flaming magic damage, but also Vanguard, 94 speed. They are light cavalry, the lightest of ghost cavalry. 0 armor, but 75% physical resistance. Strider means they'll maintain that speed up and down a high and low ground. And here they get the interaction that I was looking for. Not only do Skin Wolves have a weakness to fire because of their standard regeneration trait, they also have physical resistance, so both the magic and fire come into play here in this engagement. And these Hexwraiths are going to just rip up these Skin Wolves here, especially if they could get some nice buffs. Krell also been summoned here, going after Shaman Sorcerer, Lore of Fire, and there's the Dance Macabre we were looking for, as well as just a single cast Invocation of Nehek. Keep them fighting nice, and look at those Skin Wolves just get shredded, and terrified, of course, because Hexwraiths cause terror as well, as do all the Ethereal units on Vampire Count's roster. But yeah, the other Hexwraiths running around the back line managed to combine with some Graveguard to terrify away bunch of troops there. Wolfric is just getting bogged down by Cairnwraiths and Skeleton Spears, actually both trading very cost effectively with him. And oh man, that breath attack was a bit rough, aimed at the Graveguard with Great Weapons, but does hit the Marauders. And the Great Weapon, yeah, the Great Weapons and the Horsemen, I should say. Sea Fang getting used in response. Krell just absolutely wrecking the Shaman Sorcerer, is going to pull around and retarget onto Wolfric. That's a great play there. These other Hexwraiths are just moving in. This is potentially a problem, though, with the Frostbite and the chilling aura of the Frostworm. They're not going to be able to get away, and of course the Frostworm does fire damage. This is not a good situation for the Hexwraiths to be in. The Hounds will also be able to trade okay here, as long as they don't get terrified. Invocation of Nehek from Heinrich. He also gets Hunter of Champions on him. But even still, probably, yep, nice zombie summon there from the Necromancer. And Heinrich's going to charge in, even with the Hunter of Champions active. What a bold fellow. Just runs in to get that healing sword proc. A little bit of extra healing on the Hexwraiths there. They dodge that Burning Head. These other Hexwraiths doing a good job ping-ponging around in this back line, not getting caught up too long in any one combat. But here they are going to get a little bit outnumbered just by reams of horsemen, which is a bit of a problem. I mean, even with that physical resistance, getting outnumbered this heavily, they'll still get dragged down. But Kemmler pushing away the Frostworm. It was actually just straight up losing to the zombies and Kemmler right there, while the other Hexwraiths are keeping the Shaman Sorcerer occupied. Yeah, Krell came in, and Wolfric is having a pretty bad time. Krell better than ever, but with the new mass changes, I should say, he's always been good, to be honest. I've always been a fan of him, at least. But now with the mass changes, he can punch back better than ever, and somebody like Wolfric up on the Mammoth is going to have a hard time not getting Krellified. But yeah, over here, Frostworm again going after the Hexwraiths. This is what we want to see from Norsca. this engagement away from support here is pretty ideal for the Frostworm. It should be able to clean up this unit of Hexwraiths, although that Fire Sorcerer did get shattered, so one of the two sources of magic damage is gone. There are still Skinwolves alive, but Wulfric also gets routed here. The Canwraiths are just fast enough to try and keep up with him, but no. Skinwolves now come in and start to kind of block them out. This one unit of Hexwraiths is technically still unliving. They haven't quite keeled over yet. Nice Invocation to Heck might be able to sustain them. Still got some more Hexwraiths here. They do have the speed to keep up at this point, although Marauder Horsemen, because they're active, their vigor is higher, I should say. These guys are basically exhausted. But Frost Worm charges in to try and goon out the Necromancer, which is potentially a mistake. Krell is off the field, but there's plenty of summons in play, and now the Hexwraiths can try and get a little bit of a counter charge here, use their flaming damage to good effect on the Frostworm, of course, because it is also weak to fire, as all the Frosty units are. Except for the Frost Pigeon for the High Elves, but that's something entirely separate. Nice Fang, though, does cut through and just fells a number of models there. The question is, kind of, can Kemmler help sustain these Hexwraiths long enough? They are both technically crumbling. A fun interaction because of Undead. Crumbling units, which are technically, you know, leadership broken, can actually terrify units, which are not leadership broken. Yeah, anyway, let's not talk about that. But, yeah, Wulfric comes back from route, and things are looking a bit weird. Really nice Breath Attack comes in. Probably going to finish off those two Hexwraiths, but both of them have likely paid for themselves already. 154 kills there. We'll check out the value after the fact. But, yeah, man, absolutely awesome. You really don't get to see them super often, so I was glad to see them in this matchup. I do think they're pretty risky. The chill guys you'll see occasionally, but they don't have the fire damage. They have a chilling aura instead, which is good, don't get me wrong. Of course, the Regiment of Renown stats also help, but Hexwraiths are pretty expensive, and they're hard to use if your opponent has the right tools to deal with Ethereals, which your opponent likely will, and even without that, they're just a little squishy because they're kind of low HP. Even with that physical resistance, you can keep them alive with good micro, but I will say it's micro-intensive, as a lot of light cavalry are. But at this point, balance of power is evening out. This Frostworm is still pretty healthy at this point, and with a lot of the Ghost Cav gone, yep, the last of the Hexwraiths actually disappear there before they're able to finish the Skinwolves, so maybe Norsca has a chance of coming back here. Let's fast forward a little bit through this mid-game as the Vampire Blob now just holds up. Going to be attempted cycle charge by the Frostworm, but I mean, Kemmler's not a pushover with Undeath Resurgent active. He's up to 4369, quite nice in terms of his melee stats. Only 340 weapon strength, but he should get some contact there on the Frostworm, and the Frostworm actually not fast enough to get back up in the air. Kemmler just kind of pushing him around a little bit there. So maybe the Skinwolves will go peel. Nope, they're just going to chill back. Protect the Javelins at this point. Wulfric's also back. But the lack of the caster now at this point, like a Burning Head would be backbreaking in a situation like this, so getting rid of that caster, also something the Hexwraiths did that was very, very important for the tactics of this battle. But once Wulfric gives up his leadership, if he were to, especially if he were to get killed here, that would be pretty much it. But yeah, Skinwolves are going to charge in here. They're going to get quickly torn up. Hexwraiths, or sorry, the Canwraiths, no flaming damage, but they do have magic damage. And the Necromancer also has 300 weapon strength on his corpse cart, which will punch some of the Skinwolves in the face. And meanwhile, Frostworm's still getting chased by Kemmler. There you go. Continue fast-forwarding a little bit. Finally, something comes to bail out the Frostworm from the Dread Kemmler. But yeah, Frostworm now charges down in. And it ends up actually looking a little bit closer, I think, than the balance of power would say. If this Necromancer goes down, it could be problems, because then there's no more spells here. And the Marauder Javelins are throwing. I'm not sure exactly what they're targeted at, though. Unfortunately, I don't think they're targeted at the Necromancer, but he just kills himself with a Forbidden Rod. I guess he does get the last zombie summon off. But, yeah, meanwhile, Dread Kemmler is still just holding out over here. Undeath Resurgent again, up to 69 melee defense, just fighting the Skinwolves and the Hounds, no problem. Holding on at the very least. Does count for quite a bit on the balance of power, but you'll see as he starts to take damage here, that's, yeah, the balance of power will come back quite considerably, even though it isn't really, whoops, holding much on him. A little bit of misclick there. Death embraces your lord, yes. Kemmler goes down. But will it end up mattering? The Hexwraiths, or the Cairnwraiths, I've made that mistake several times now. The Cairnwraiths are holding, zombies are holding, everything's crumbling, but army losses doesn't exist to counts. Sternsmen managed to stabilize their leadership. Skinwolves actually shatter. Yeah, Wulfric is actually shattered as well. Means as soon as he leaves the battlefield, that'll create more leadership issues for Norsca. And the Frostworm, one of the reasons people say it's so bad is because, like, in a fight like this, just can't really hit the Sternsmen. I mean, 47 attack versus 45 defense. Sternsmen will be holding out pretty well here. Cairnwraiths also getting some little incidental attacks, although Frostworm has magic damage. I don't know, maybe the Frostworm pulls up and around and gets a rear breath attack if it could recover its leadership. But the Cairnwraiths cause terror, and they're not gone yet. Will these units actually terror out here? I'm surprised those hounds... Oh, and the Cairnwraiths are gone, so the source of terror is gone. Guess it's all down to the Sternsmen now. Can they hold out? Not looking good. Not looking good. Nice rear charge from the hounds. Oh, but the hounds are subject to anti-infantry, of course, from the Sternsmen. They do count as infantry. Javelins are also gone. Frostworm barely holding on to its leadership, and I think the Sternsmen probably win on leadership here, but let's wait and see. Marauder Horsemen certainly aren't too happy. Frostworm does come in. Once its charge bonus wears off, it won't be doing a whole lot of damage to the Sternsmen. Again, because of that high melee defense. And tanks. The truest of true tanks. The best defensive regiment of renown in the game, in my opinion. Managed to take home the victory purely based on leadership, which is a little bit ridiculous. You know, gotta love undead sometimes, but hey, that's just crumbling for you. In terms of the Hexwraiths, yeah, only 30 kills on this one, but 1,900 damage value, 1,500 damage value, a little bit closer to what they actually cost. We'll check that in just a minute. I want to say it's like 1,450 base, but 15,000 damage dealt, 155 kills. They did clean up a good portion of this kind of horde army, which is good. And Yurzum Sauce, a little bit low on numbers. For me personally, I like to have vampire counts built with a little bit more numbers, so I would probably say cut one of these unholy lodestones down to a regular corpse card. That'll allow you to bring 2 zombies, maybe cut 1 skeleton spears. That's 3 more zombies. You max out 5 zombies, and suddenly you just have a lot more meat to this army. It doesn't really take a lot to add extra numbers. And against Norsca, because they're not great at attrition, I find that to be quite helpful, but ended up working out okay. One of the Sternsmen got roasted out. The other one that did not, definitely paid for itself. Graveguard also racking up quite a bit of kills. Not really that much value on this one, though. This one did pay for itself, as did the Sternsmen there. Yeah, Krell, definitely from Kemmler, paid for himself. The Necromancer also, the summons were really good. But yeah, man, those Hexwraiths, very interesting in this matchup. For Norsca, Wulfric, almost 4,000 damage value, definitely pays for himself. Shaman Sorcerer, Lord of Fire, getting routed off was tough, but he also paid for himself. Marauders, reasonably cost-effective here for the most part, Javelins especially. Horsemen also. The Hounds did a good job, which is surprising. Against Undead, Hounds can sometimes have a hard time because of their low leadership, but here actually paying for themselves. It was really the Skinwolves. One of them just absolutely died to death, and the other one did pay for itself, but man, 4,000 damage value as well on the Frostworm. You don't see that every day. Frostworm, I would say, is generally a very risky pick against vampire counts because they can also take super strong flying air force and just hard counter you in the air. This guy can't heal, and they can, and anyway. But yeah, let's just quickly talk about Hexwraiths a little bit more. In terms of kind of cavalry units, they are somewhat unique. The only sort of expensive heavy cavalry units, I guess you have like or light cavalry units, sorry. You have like monstrous light cav, which are a little bit of a different thing. I would say the Stag Knights. Really, the closest analog I can think of maybe is Dark Elves, like Doomfire Warlocks, which again, it's not really a great comparison because they're not really even the same role. But yeah, 1,400 for the Hexwraiths. Stats are not amazing. The weapon strength is pretty good though. 42 weapon strength is actually pretty good. And if I pull up, I mean, it's not like Cold One, you know, Cold One Knight good, but I believe, I want to say Questing Knights are pretty close. 48 on Questing Knights, so it is a little bit more. they're basically just like lesser questing knights in every way in terms of their stats. 720 less HP, obviously they have physical resistance instead of armor, which situationally can be better, of much faster speed, but they're somewhat comparable to questing knights, although I will say again, they're more expensive, 300 points more expensive, but yeah, one of the reasons you don't see them much is because your expensive cav slots are generally filled by Blood Knights, and I would say even in that last battle, maybe would have been better to just have the Blood Knights instead. But the Hexwraiths are a fun option, definitely, and you know, that Flaming and Terror can make them a nice add in your cavalry force. Like I would say a mixed force of Blood Knights and Hexwraiths generally be pretty strong. I'm a fan of going with a very cheap kind of hero and lord core with this faction in a lot of matchups, either going like Kemler or Gorst with some meme loadout. You know, like you can go all the way cheap down. I actually do like the Undeath Resurgent on Kemler, so I'll probably take that. Take no spells, just Krell. And you can take Cloak of Mists and Shadows and the Horse if you want, but if you want full cheap out, then you just take the sword only, and he's only, you know, 1,000 points. And anyway, you know the drill. Then take the Necromancer. You'd likely have this guy anyway. You could take him on an Unholy Lodestone, but for sake of cost, I'll probably just do that. And I'm also going to forsake the Forbidden Rod, just because the extra winds of magic are nice, but I also don't want this guy to die. And that kind of allows me to go very wide on Cav. Maybe even take some Hounds, given specific matchup, like against Norsca, for example. 2 Blood Knights, pretty good idea. I might consider the Chill Guys, just because Norsca, I don't think they would try and kite you. I don't know if they could very well, but maybe something like this. Couple Hexwraiths, couple Blood Knights, then you support with a whole mess of Skeleton Spears, get zombies out our ears, White King also on foot to help kind of support infantry line. We'll come in here, grab the Sternsman as well. So I don't have as much kind of heavy infantry, but just more in terms of numbers. And you could even go ahead and add, like, I don't know, Feast of the Feasters, or I don't quite have the points for them, but Crypt Ghouls in general, high weapon strength, they'll do okay against some Marauder units. I don't know, maybe it's not the best. Just kind of spitballing here. Maybe you come in here, you could find literally a few points. You know, maybe cut this from this guy or something. Get the Dire Pack. I don't know. Just kind of theory crafting here a little bit, but I would say the Hexwraiths against factions which are weak to fire. Norsca is kind of the weakest to fire, I would say, as a general rule. In terms of other factions which are... Oh, stopping and thinking about it for a minute. Greenskins is an interesting one. Greenskins don't have the most magic damage in the world either, and they also are likely to bring... I don't know, Stone Trolls aren't super common in this matchup because their leadership isn't good to begin with. Yes, they can get immune to Psychology, but still kind of easy to rout them. And the armor piercing plus, I mean, magic damage does get countered, I guess, here by the 25%, so it's not really a net gain. Yeah, so maybe Stone Trolls are not the best example. But yeah, just... Tomb Kings maybe against their lords. I don't know. It just seems kind of risky for only one unit. And they also have pretty decent magic damage as well. I don't know. For me, Norsca kind of screams out as the one that's the most viable to actually take Hexwraiths in. Dark Elves also have quite a bit of magic damage. You know, from Warlocks, AoE Soul Stealers and stuff. They don't really have too many units which are weak to fire either. Yeah, I guess really only the Hydra now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, let's just say Norsca's the best matchup and leave it at that for now. I'd be interested to see, though, I might do some playing around with them to see in other matchups if there are kind of specific units. Wood Elves, the issue is, like, their units which are weak to fire damage also deal magic damage, so it's just a nope in terms of that situation. And for factions which are not weak fire, that, you know, you don't have any way of getting like Kindle Flame, for example, so there's no way to kind of add on to that interaction to get that stacking effect. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? Would you take Hexwraiths in any other matchup, or is it specifically a key unit against Norsca to beat like Skinwolves explicitly? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.